This is Rosen Institute's Your Law Firm, where Ned Days and Lee Rosen cover management, marketing, finance, and new technologies for building the practice you deserve. Rosen Institute members received this episode early, as well as exclusive segments on getting ready for the holidays ahead of time, and an answer to a member question about managing employees through big changes. Get access to everything you're missing at roseninstitute.com/join. Here's Ned Days.
It's time for your tech tip. Lawyers are no strangers to dictation technology. Even when it seemed like computer dictation was more or less dead to most consumers, I knew attorneys who, while not exactly savvy in other regards, had extensive setups with tools like Drag and Dictate that left me dumbfounded. All kinds of special actions and commands to work around the shortcomings and get a surprising amount done with just voice. But in the last few years, voice is back in a big way. Voice assistants showed up, live voice mode in AI tools is here, not to mention inline transcription in ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. Now, I am well aware that our phones and computers have built-in speech-to-text, but third-party speech-to-text algorithms like OpenAI's Whisper, NVIDIA's Parakeet, and Moonshine version 2 are substantially faster and more accurate than the built-in ones on our machines. And dedicated tools let you do all kinds of other cool stuff, like run your transcripts through AI prompts, control your computer, transcribe audio files or YouTube videos, and a lot more. I've talked about these before, but in the last 6 months or so, there has been a Cambrian explosion of these voice-to-text solutions. Free, paid, desktop, mobile, everything you could possibly want. And I want to highlight a few here for two reasons. First, there are now legitimately good solutions that are completely free and or open source. There is no excuse not to try one of these out. If you don't want a subscription, you don't need it. There's no lock-in or special commands to learn at this point. You pick your hotkey, connect an AI provider, copy over some custom prompts if you want, and you are good to go. And switching is trivial. They all work in essentially the same way. And second, there are some interesting features that you may be overlooking even if you are using one at the moment. Fast and accurate voice-to-text is just the start. Now, if you are happy with the tool you have, I don't want to encourage you to switch unnecessarily. Some of them have features that others don't. They all seem to be adding new features pretty regularly, but don't let changing the tool fool you into thinking that you've got real work done. That said, switching around isn't a big deal at all. I seem to have about 5 of these on my computer at any given time because it's really just a matter of configuring some options and making sure you've set the hotkey to whatever it is you prefer. There's not a lot of vendor-specific information to learn. If the tool has the features that you want, the migration time and learning curve is basically zero. There are still, of course, some heavy hitters like Super Whisper, WhisperFlow, Voice Inc., and others that are polished, cross-platform, and come with a monthly fee. The ones I will cover today are newer and either free or have very generous free tiers. And I'll be completely honest, I have suggested using speech-to-text apps for a while, but until recently, I didn't use them all that often myself. But I made a point to start using them more often, especially for AI prompting and interactions, and it has been a huge improvement. If you're like me and you've thought, oh, I'm a big boy, I can just type in whatever I want, I would really encourage you to give it a try and stick with it for a couple of days. Being able to just babble my stream of consciousness nonsense when I am going back and forth with Claude or Gemini moves things along way faster and gets me much better results. These tools do have built-in speech-to-text, but I kind of like having one key command that works everywhere and has some extras baked in. Whether I am taking notes, writing scripts or emails, or replying to messages, being able to just brain dump lets me get all of my ideas out before my feeble little intellect forgets everything I wanted to say, and I have the option of using AI to clean it up so that it sounds like a reasonable person wrote it instead of some guy in his underwear who has been drinking orange cream Ghost energy drinks since 5 in the morning. The way these tools work is generally the same. They use a local transcription model to transcribe your voice into text. At this point, nothing has left your device. It is all on your machine, and it's very, very quick. And most allow for some basic filtering or filler word removal so that the transcript is reasonably clean. From there, they give you the option to send that transcript to an LLM with a custom prompt for post-processing. If you are on a Mac, most of these tools let you use the built-in Apple Intelligence model, which is okay for small stuff, not the best, but it's all running locally on your machine. It's not going to send anything to the cloud. Most apps will let you connect LM Studio if you are using that app to run open source models locally on your machine as well, either on Mac or Windows. But what you'll probably want to do, and what I would recommend, is to use an OpenAI API key or something like an OpenRouter API key, which I've talked about before, to send the transcript off to an AI provider in the cloud. This is going to be pretty fast and give you access to the latest and greatest models. Now, why would you want to send what you have dictated to an LLM and then have it pasted back into whatever app you're using? Well, if you have some standard prompts you like to use to turn your notes or text into an email or a proposal or something else, this gives you an easy way to do that without needing to go back and forth with your AI program. Some of these tools let you have multiple prompts that you can select from. I've basically found I just use one prompt. I have cobbled together one that does some extra cleanup and formatting, and I've added a few extra features on top of that. I can go back in and correct something if I make a mistake so that I don't have to do it manually in the text. And I can say, "Hey computer," and give it some instructions like pulling in information or formatting something in a specific way, and then end those instructions with "Thanks computer," and everything in my instructions to the computer is acted on by the LLM but not transcribed. There are dozens of things you can do with this, but that's the one I found the most useful. So let's look at some of the best apps to get started with this. A quick and easy solution that runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux is Handy, which you can find at handy.computer. This is a free open source application that just covers the basics but does it very well. You get a hotkey to bring up dictation, which you can set to be push to talk or push to start and push to stop. You can create a dictionary of custom words. These are words that might have tricky spellings or might be hard to pronounce names or software products. Adding them here means you won't have to fix them in the transcription after the fact. Handy will figure that out for you. And you can set up AI post-processing using an API key from something like ChatGPT, Anthropic, or Google. A much more feature-packed option is TypeWhisper, which you can find at typewhisper.com. It's available for Mac. There is a beta version for Windows and an alpha version for iOS. TypeWhisper has the basics, some dictation, AI enhancement, transcription from a file, but with a lot of exciting extras. You get a dictionary of special words like Handy. You can create a library of snippets, which is like a voice-driven text expander equivalent. You say something like office address, and it inserts your actual office address. You can even use dynamic placeholders for things like the date, time, and automatically insert whatever is on your clipboard into the snippet. You can create sets of specific settings based on the website or app that you happen to be in, so you can configure a specific combination of transcription model, AI prompt, and language translation based on the context. TypeWhisper is a commercial product. They have a free version for non-commercial use, which you can test with, and then a commercial license that starts at €5 per month. My go-to solution for the past year or so has been a Mac-only app called MacWhisper. It's a one-time fee of £64, and it started out primarily as an audiophile transcription product that has evolved into a dictation solution with live transcripts, automatic meeting detection, and recording so that you can use it to get transcripts from any meeting platform or any app really without needing a bot to join the meeting. It has extensive options for batch processing. You can paste in a YouTube video link to get a transcript. You can send out webhooks to a platform like Make or Zapier to kick off a workflow every time a file is transcribed. It will do language translations and a lot more. But I've recently been playing around with another Mac-only option called Fluid Voice, available at altic.dev. It's free and open source, and it does a lot of the same stuff. It doesn't have the meeting functionality. The transcript processing is just one at a time, but it offers some experimental computer control functionality that's quite interesting. There is a mode for selecting text on your screen, dictating a prompt, and then modifying the selected text based on your input. And honestly, the reason I have switched to it is because I can set one key command for a raw transcription and then a different key command to pass my transcript through an AI prompt. You can do that with MacWhisper, but it requires using a pop-up menu to select the prompt in real time, and I've always found that a little bit clunky. That little bit of convenience plus being free and being actively developed has made it worth it for me to switch. So if you are not yet using one, grab something like Handy and you will be up and running in 5 minutes. If you've experimented with one but didn't find it all that useful, I would encourage you to force yourself to use one for a week and see if it doesn't change your mind. And if you're using one already but you haven't looked at features for power users, like multiple prompts, computer control, or triggering workflows from transcripts. Pick one that you like and give it a whirl. I'm Ned Days, and that's your tech tip. And now for your moment of concise advice. Many, many years ago, back when websites still did a lot of the heavy lifting in marketing or practice, I sat down to write some copy for our firm's site. It was kind of a long-form sales letter encouraging the visitor to take action and call us. I was looking around for ideas from other practices, and they were all doing exactly the same thing. They were talking about themselves, their experience, their quality, their commitment to excellence, their years in practice. And it was apparent to me you could just mix and match the language and the firm. It was all interchangeable because it didn't actually say anything. There was no real positioning happening. So I decided I wasn't going to talk about the firm at all for this little project. I was going to talk about the client. We were a family law practice. Now, I had never been divorced. I wasn't even married at that point, but I could imagine how I would feel and what I would be worried about in that situation. And I didn't want to talk about us because I wanted to talk about what they were already feeling about themselves. The embarrassment and the shame in telling their parents and their friends, the panic about the retirement account that they'd spent years building, the lump in their throats the moment they had to think about telling the kids what was happening. I wrote about all of that. I barely mentioned the firm at all, and it worked. We had people calling and coming in and mentioning how that language on that page felt like somebody knew exactly what they were going through. And that convinced me that when you are pitching yourself to clients and referral sources and whoever else, the most engaging thing you can do is highlighting what makes you different, or in my case, taking a different approach. You don't want to be fighting on the same meaningless platitudes that everybody else is. Being cheaper or being more experienced or being more excellent are meaningless. They are completely generic. Everybody says them. Believe it or not, even lawyers who aren't that great sometimes say that they are dependable and deliver high quality work. And as a result, when you just copy what everybody else is saying, it ends up conveying absolutely nothing. You may as well have left the default photos and lorem ipsum text in the site template or the social media template or whatever other marketing channel you're making use of. You might be thinking that the way out of this is to capitalize on being the best. Well, forget cheaper and more experienced, just be the best in your market and let everything else take care of itself. Of course, the problem with that is that being the best isn't any more convincing. For the sake of argument, let's just imagine it is for the moment. It's still a moving target. The best phone is only a temporary award. The next year's model is going to have objectively better specifications. The best hotel or restaurant is rarely something you see these places advertise to any large degree. They are focusing on exclusivity or some aspect of what makes them unique, but best is just too broad and too pick-me to be worth it in most cases. So what does actually make your practice different? How should you position yourself differently to everybody else? How should you tell the story differently? What different approach should you take? There is an old piece of marketing advice that says you want to become known as the blank guy in your market. And you can see this everywhere, from local shops to YouTube hustlers trying to sell you some course, John the guitar guy, Tracy the bicycle girl, that kind of thing. The most ham-fisted version of this I ever came across was a guy who used to advertise on the radio when I was in college, and his whole pitch was that he was the Northeast Florida detached aluminum garage guy. Definitely niching down on that one for better or for worse. I think the fill-in-the-blank guy template is a little worn out and goofy, but it is a useful exercise to get you thinking about how you would want to be positioned if you've never given it much thought, because nobody is ever going to remember you as the quality guy or the experienced guy. So what would they remember you as, or think of you as, or refer to you as? That is the question I want you to be thinking about this week. Maybe you're not competing on low price. Maybe your thing is that you are the expensive option. You are not the lawyer for the everyman. You handle a very particular kind of client. You charge accordingly, and the people who work with you like the fact that you are not cheap because it filters out the people they don't want to be sitting next to in the waiting room. That might not be polite, but that is a positioning, so own it. Maybe your thing is that you have been on the other side of the table. You went through a bankruptcy, you had a DUI, you know what it feels like from where the client is sitting, and you talk about that openly instead of pretending that you've only ever viewed the problem from 30,000 feet. That's a positioning too. Not everybody can say that. Maybe your thing is that you wear Groucho Marx glasses on every consult call. I don't know. I'm not saying that that's the answer. I am saying that you should be willing to entertain ideas that sound a little abrasive when you say them out loud, because the alternative is being completely indistinguishable from everybody else. The reason a lot of lawyers, and frankly a lot of business owners in general, never grapple with this is that being different feels very, very exposed. When you stake out a real position, some chunk of the market is going to look at you and decide that you are not for them. Some of your peers and colleagues are going to think that you have broken a gentleman's agreement of some kind. Being generic feels a lot safer because nobody can specifically dislike a generic thing. Nobody is pointing at you and saying, oh, he prides himself on honesty, how gauche. But nobody specifically remembers a generic thing either. So this week, I would encourage you to sit down on purpose and finish the sentence, people who work with me get something they can't get from any other firm, which is blank. Actually write or type that out. It might be a single word. It will probably be a phrase that encapsulates something about your practice. If what you come up with could be said about any or every other firm or every other business, throw it out and come up with something different. Keep going until you have something that would make a competitor mildly uncomfortable to read and or that would make a prospective client say, instead of nodding politely and then clicking away. That's your moment of concise advice. Wrapping up from Jacksonville, thank you for joining us today. Never forget that what you are doing is important work. Small, consistent steps focusing on marketing, management, and technology are how we build better firms. And you are 1 week closer to the practice you deserve. Until next time, I'm Ned Days.
Thanks for listening to Your Law Firm. Subscribe to the Friday File at roseninstitute.com and join thousands of other lawyers who are working on instead of in their businesses. You'll find safe, successful, actionable approaches for transforming your practice. Join us today at roseninstitute.com.